Hello everyone, today is a new beginning. Today we are starting our course on heat. Heat is simple and scoring. You don't have to memorize too much here. There are some simple concepts which are used everywhere. Just keep on listening carefully. 5 to 6 questions will come from the part of heat. The first thing we are going to discuss in the part of heat is linear expansion and thermometry. So first I will focus on thermometry, then we will go towards linear expansion. So without wasting time, first understand thermometry. So what exactly is thermometry? So thermometry, measurement of temperature, that's called thermometry. We use different type of scales to measure the temperature. We know the degree Celsius scale, then there is degree Fahrenheit scale, and then we know there is an absolute temperature scale which is called the Kelvin scale. Now, if temperatures are given on these three scales, how to convert them, how to compare them? So on every scale, we mark up two benchmarks. There is something called lower fixed point, denoted by this lower line, and there is called upper fixed point, denoted by the upper line. The Celsius scale, the lower fixed point is taken as the melting point of ice, which is denoted as 0 degree centigrade, and the upper fixed point as the boiling point of water, which is denoted as 100 degree centigrade. So on Celsius scale, lower fixed point is 0 degree centigrade, upper fixed point is 100 degree centigrade. On the Fahrenheit scale, this is not the benchmark. The benchmark is something different. But the same temperature of 0 degree centigrade on the Fahrenheit scale is 32 degree Fahrenheit, and the temperature of 100 degree centigrade is equal to that of 212 degree Fahrenheit. You can take any benchmark, it doesn't matter. That's why even for Fahrenheit scale, you can assume these two temperatures as the lower fixed point and the upper fixed point. Similarly, we have got the absolute scale, which is the Kelvin scale. Now, the temperature of 0 degree centigrade, which is nothing but the melting point of ice on the Kelvin scale, is 273 Kelvin. And the boiling point of water, which on the degree Celsius scale is 100 degree centigrade, is same as 373 Kelvin. Now, how to convert a temperature from one scale to another? Let's say a single temperature, which I have denoted with this horizontal line, is being read on the three different scales. So if this temperature on the Celsius scale, let's say, reads C, on the degree Fahrenheit scale reads F, and on the Kelvin scale reads K, then how many C will be equal to how many F and will be equal to how many K? That's what we need to find. To find this, there is a very simple formula, and this works on all linear scales. Sir, what are linear scales? Linear scales are the one in which the change in the reading is directly proportional to the change in temperature. Once more, linear scales are the one in which the change in the reading is directly proportional to the change in temperature. So let's say we have got these three linear scales, and for all linear scales, you can use this particular formula. You can say given temperature C minus lower fixed point 0 upon upper fixed point 100 minus lower fixed point 0 is same for all scale. So I can say given temperature C minus 0 upon 100 minus 0 is equal to given temperature F minus lower fixed point 32 upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point 212 minus 32. And on the Kelvin scale, you can write the same thing as given temperature K minus lower fixed point 273 upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point 373 minus 273. This will be same for all scale. So as to make you understand, first I am writing here centigrade to Kelvin conversion. So you will say C minus 0 upon 100 minus 0. Given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point is same for all scale. This has to be equals to K minus 273 upon 373 minus 273. Now on the left hand side in denominator we have got 100. On the right hand side in denominator we have got 373 minus 273, which is again 100. So these two quantities are equal, cancel. So you say that C equals to K minus 273 or K equals to C plus 273. It means that the reading on the Kelvin scale equals to the reading on the centigrade scale plus 273. Once more, the reading on the Kelvin scale equals to the reading on the degree centigrade scale plus 273, and I know most of you already know this. So sir, in thermometry, what do we have to learn? Just this single formula. For all linear scales, given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point equals to constant. This is the formula that you have to mug up. Now, before we do some questions based on temperature conversion from one linear scale to another, first let's learn how to convert Celsius into Fahrenheit. So let's say we have got these two scales. They are the Celsius and the Fahrenheit scale. The lower fixed point for Celsius and Fahrenheit scale are 0 degree centigrade and 32 degree Fahrenheit. The upper fixed points are 100 degree centigrade and 212 degree Fahrenheit. If we wish to compare a particular temperature on both these scales, let's say on the Celsius scale it reads C and on the Fahrenheit scale the same temperature reads F. The temperature is same, the readings are different. Why? Because you are using different type of scale. So how to convert temperature from Celsius to Fahrenheit? You will use the same formula. Given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point is same for all linear scales. So you will say, using given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point equals to constant for all scale. First, for the Celsius scale, you can write C minus 0 upon 100 minus 0. And for the Fahrenheit scale, you can write F minus 32 upon 212 minus 32. So here C minus 0 gives C, 100 minus 0 gives 100, F minus 32 gives F minus 32, and 212 minus 32, 212 minus 32, here you get a 0, 21 minus 3, 18, 180. Okay. So on the left hand side you get C by 100 and on the right hand side you get F minus 32 divided by 180. If you cancel both 100 and 180 by a factor of 20, here you get a 5, here you get a 9. So you can even write C by 5 equals to F minus 32 divided by 9. Now if you wish to write the temperature in Fahrenheit as a function of temperature in degree centigrade. So what to do? Multiply this 9 up. So you'll write 9C by 5 equals to F minus 32. Or the temperature on the Fahrenheit scale will be equal to 9 times temperature on the degree centigrade scale by 5 plus 32. So this is how you write temperature conversion. Now once you have written this and now you wish to draw the graph of temperature on Fahrenheit scale versus the temperature on Celsius scale. So on the y-axis you have F, on the x-axis you have C. You can see, sir, this is the equation of straight line, y equals to mx plus c. Here the slope of the line is 9 by 5, which is 1.8. The slope of the line is 9 by 5 and the y-intercept will be 32. So you can say slope is positive as well as y-intercept is positive. If the slope of the straight line is positive as well as y-intercept is positive, you get this type of straight line. So when you draw the graph of Fahrenheit versus Celsius, you get a straight line. Notice that the slope is positive as well as the y-intercept comes out to be positive. Okay. Now you can even rewrite the same equation where you write centigrade in terms of Fahrenheit. So what to do? Multiply each term with 5 by 9. When you multiply each term with 5 by 9, you get 5 by 9 F equals to 5 by 9 times 9 by 5, that becomes 1. C plus 32 into 5 by 9. Now 32 into 5 gives you 160. So you get C equals to 5F by 9 minus 160 by 9. Okay. So you can write C as 5F by 9 minus 160 by 9. Again you can see, if we plot the graph of C versus F, on the y-axis this time I have taken C and on the x-axis F. From the equation of straight line y equals to mx plus c, I know that the slope is 5 by 9, a positive slope, and the y-intercept is minus 160 by 9, a negative y-intercept. So I have to visualize a straight line with a positive slope and negative y-intercept. So positive slope and negative y-intercept, something like this. So this is what the graph of C versus F look like and F versus C looks like. Easy thing to remember. So now let's practice out some questions based on thermometry. Remember that all these questions can be answered using just one formula, that is given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point equals to constant. So let's start. The first question. On a new scale, 120x is same as 20 degrees centigrade and 300x is same as 80 degrees centigrade. Then 53 degrees centigrade will be represented by how many x? So 120x same as 20, 300x same as 80, then 53 degrees centigrade will be equals to how many x, and what will be the reading on the x scale for the temperature of 53 degrees centigrade. So visualize the lower fixed point, upper fixed point. So on the centigrade scale, take the lower fixed point as 20, which is same as 120x, and the upper fixed point as 80 degrees centigrade, which is same as 300x. Now you can simply use the formula. We need to tell what is the temperature on the x scale corresponding to the temperature of 53 degrees centigrade. Now let's say this reading reads k, so I have written here kx. So you will say given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point equals to constant for all linear scale. So when you write this formula for the Celsius scale, you will write 53 minus 20 given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point, that is 80 minus 20. So 53 minus 20 upon 80 minus 20. This is what you have written for Celsius scale. Now write the same thing for the x scale. Given temperature k minus 120 minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point 300 minus 120. So you get k minus 120 upon 300 minus 120. Beta 80 minus 20 is 60. 53 minus 20 is 33. K minus 120 is k minus 130. And 300 minus 120 is 180. So write it again. So you will get 33 by 60 equals to k minus 120 by 180. Here you can cancel out by a factor of 3 and bring this 3 up. So 33 into 3 becomes 99. So you get 33 into 3 equals to k minus 120. So what you get is k equals to 99 plus 120, and visualize this 120 plus 99, you get a 9, you get a 1, you put the 1 up here, so you get 2. So what you get is 290 degree, not 219x. That will be the answer. Okay, let's practice next example based on the same concept of thermometry. So if 100 degrees centigrade equals to 20 E, if 100 degrees centigrade equals to 20 E, and 150 degrees centigrade equals to 45 E, there is a new scale called E. So if 100 degrees centigrade equals to 20 E and 150 degrees centigrade equals to 45 E, then bachcho 200 degrees centigrade equals to how many E? So you know that the lower fixed point is 100 degrees centigrade, which is equals to 20 E. The upper fixed point is 150 degrees centigrade, which is same as 45 E, and you need to find what temperature on the E scale is same as 200 degree centigrade. So beta visualize the case. 100 degrees centigrade same as 20 E, 150 degrees centigrade same as 45 E, and you have to tell 200 degrees centigrade equals to how many E. Let's say it's equals to KE. Use the formula. Given temperature minus lower fixed point 200 minus 100 upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point 150 minus 100 is same for all scale. So then you can write on the right hand side for the E scale, given temperature KE minus lower fixed point 20E upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point, that is 45E minus 20E. This will be same for all scale. So you will write 200 minus 100 given minus lower upon upper minus lower 150 minus 100. So you get 100 upon 50 on the left hand side. 200 minus 100 is 100, 150 minus 100 is 50. And on the right hand side you get given temperature minus lower fixed point K minus 20 upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point 45 minus 20. So this gives you beta a 25 in denominator. So what you get is 100 by 50 equals to K minus 20 by 25. Now you can do a little bit of maths here. Cancel here, you get a 2, you bring this 25 up, 25 into 2 becomes 50. So you get K minus 20 equals to 50. Once you know that K minus 20 is 50, K has to be equals to 70. So the temperature on the E scale corresponding to 200 degrees centigrade is same as 70 E. Let's move on to the next example. At 100 degrees centigrade, a constant volume gas thermometer reads 1.5 atm. At 150 degrees centigrade, it reads 1.7 atm. Then what is the reading of this constant volume gas thermometer at 250 degrees centigrade? Now, as soon as a student see constant volume gas thermometer or constant pressure gas thermometer or some other type of random thermometer, do not worry. If they are placing a question in NEET, it has to be on linear scale. And for all linear scale, you can use given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point equals to constant. That's why we have placed a question on the constant volume gas thermometer. It's the same concept. Do not worry at all. So you will say 100 degrees centigrade same as 1.5 atm. Take it as the lower fixed point. So 100 degrees centigrade same as 1.5. 150 degrees centigrade same as 1.7. Take it as the upper fixed point. So 150 degrees centigrade is same as 1.7 atm reading. Now you need to find 250 degrees centigrade correspond to what reading on the constant volume gas thermometer, let's say K atm, and use the same formula beta. Given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point is same for all scale. So 250 minus 100 upon 150 minus 100 equals to K minus 1.5 given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point 1.7 minus 1.5. So you get 250 minus 100 upon 150 minus 100 equals to K minus 1.5 K given temperature minus lower fixed point upon upper fixed point minus lower fixed point. So on the left hand side you get 250 minus 100 150, in denominator 150 minus 100, that is 50. So you get 150 by 50, which will become 3, equals to K minus 1.5 by 0.2. So you can bring this 0.2 and multiply this with 3 times of 0.2 is 0.6. So bachcho, you get 0.6 equals to K minus 1.5. So K has to be 1.5 plus 0.6, 1.5 plus 0.6. So that gives you 6 plus 5, 11, 1. So that gives you 2.1 atm. So K comes out to be equals to 2.1 atm. Simple. So now we will talk about linear expansion. So if we have a rod of length L at temperature T, when we heat the rod, the length of the rod increases. Now let's say at a temperature T plus delta T, increasing the temperature by some amount delta T, the length increases and become L plus delta L. In the picture here, there is an over exaggeration that the length has increased by this much, but in real world, whenever we talk about increase in length, we are talking about very small increase in length, okay, compared to the original length. Physicists did some experiment and found that the change in length is directly proportional to the original length. The change in length of the rod on heating by a certain amount, on increasing the temperature by a certain amount, is directly proportional to the original length. They also found that the change in length is directly proportional to change in temperature. So the greater you make the change in temperature, the more is the change in length. Every time in this world, physicists find some proportionality, they add up a proportionality constant and make an equation out of it. And they say the change in length equals to original length into change in temperature multiplied by a proportionality constant, and here we call that proportionality constant as alpha. So we say the change in length equals to L alpha delta T. This will be the change in length. Here alpha is nothing but it is called the coefficient of linear expansion. This quantity alpha is called coefficient of linear expansion. Now remember one thing, this whole charade work for a small change in temperature, because the type of change in length we are talking are small change in length. It's not that you are going to increase the temperature by 300 degrees centigrade and expect this formula to work, right? This formula works only for small change in temperature. Now visualize a rod of copper having a length of 1 meter at 25 degrees centigrade. And let's say the length of this rod of copper increases to 1.1 meter at temperature of 30 degrees centigrade. So if the length increases from 1 to 1.1 when the temperature increases by 5 degrees centigrade, question is, rather than having a copper rod of length 1 meter, if you have a copper rod of length 2 meter at temperature of 25 and then you increase its temperature to 30, what will be the final length? So The first thing tells us that the change in length is directly proportional to original length. The greater the original length, the more will be the change in length. As the original length at 25 degrees centigrade has been doubled from 1 meter to 2 meter. The change in length, which was 0.1 on increasing the temperature by 5 degrees centigrade, that change in length will also double. So for the same increase in temperature, since the length of the copper rod has doubled, the change in length will also double. So now this time the change in length will be 0.2 meter, and hence the final length will be 2.2 meter. So the first thing tells us the change in length is directly proportional to the original length. Second thing tells us the change in length is directly proportional to the change in temperature. So let's say we have a rod of length 1 meter at 25 degrees centigrade. At temperature of 30, the length is 1.1 meter. So question is, for the same rod, what will be the length at 40 degrees centigrade? The change in length is directly proportional to the change in temperature. So you'll say, sir, here first time you increase the temperature by 5 degrees centigrade from 25 to 30, and from 25 to 40 you increase the length by 15 degrees centigrade. So when you increase the length by 5 degrees centigrade, if the length increases by 0.1, then on increasing the temperature by 15 degrees centigrade, 3 times the temperature rise. What has to be the change in length? So remember that the change in length is directly proportional to change in temperature. If the change in temperature changes from 5 to 15, it means that becomes 3 times, then the change in length will also become 3 times. So in the first case, you got the change in length to be 0.1. In this case, you will get the change in length to be 0.3. And hence the final length has to be 1.3 meter. So this is the meaning of these two statements. The change in length on heating is directly proportional to the original length, and the change in length on heating is directly proportional to the change in temperature. But do remember, this thing works only for small change in temperature and not for large changes of 100 degrees centigrade, 125 degrees centigrade. But sir, the questions we get in our material or book, there they do temperature change of 100 degrees centigrade, 150 degrees centigrade, and they still use the same formula. Because beta, this is the only formula you know. It is not valid to be used for large temperature changes, but since you know in your course material only this formula, you have to use this one. Moving on. A question. The length of a rod at 20 degrees centigrade is 1.753. At 30 degrees centigrade, it is 1.755. So at 20, it is 1.753. At 30, it is 1.755. Determine the length at 50 degrees centigrade, assuming that the rod undergoes linear expansion. So you will say, okay, at 20, the length is 1.753. At 30, the length is 1.755. My mission is to find the length at 50 degrees centigrade. If you start writing equation here rather than thinking, you will end up doing a little longer calculation, and these type of questions are super duper easy. Now beta, we know that the change in length, not the length, the change in length is directly proportional to change in temperature. On increasing the temperature from 20 to 30, you are changing temperature by how much? 10 degrees centigrade. And the length is changing by how much? Sir, the length is changing from 1.753 to 1.755. That is, the length changes by 0.002 meter. So for a 10 degree centigrade rise in temperature, the length changes by 0.002 meter. Your mission is to find the length at 50 degrees centigrade. When you increase the temperature from 20 to 50, what is the temperature rise? So the temperature rise is 30 degrees centigrade. We know that the change in length is directly proportional to change in temperature. For a temperature rise of 10 degrees centigrade, the length increases by 0.002 meter. Then beta, for a temperature rise of 30 degrees centigrade, what will be the increase in length? The change in length is directly proportional to change in temperature. When the change in temperature becomes 3 times, the change in length also becomes 3 times, and that will be 0.006 meter. So the length will increase by 0.006 meter, but they are not asking how much will the length increase. They are asking what is the length at 50. So when I increase the temperature from 20 to 50, the length increases by 0.006. It was originally 1.753. It increases by 0.006. So the final length has to be 1.759. So you can solve these questions just by thinking in your head without raising the pen. Now doing it once more slowly, focus. So change in length is directly proportional to change in temperature, or change in length can be written as some proportionality constant times change in temperature. From 20 degrees centigrade to 30 degrees centigrade, the change in temperature is 10 degrees centigrade. So you will say the change in length 1.755 minus 1.753 equals to 0.002, and this change in length 0.002 can be written as some proportionality constant k times the change in temperature, which is 10. Now when you increase the temperature from 20 to 50, the change in temperature is 30 degrees centigrade. So the change in length, let's say it is something, okay, assume the change in length to be delta L. You can write that delta L, the change in length, has to be the same proportionality constant k times the change in temperature, which is 30. Dividing both the side, you will get 0.002 by delta L equals to the k will get cancelled, 10 by 30, that will be equals to 1 by 3. And on solving this, you get 0.002 by delta L equals to 1 by 3, or delta L equals to 0.002 times 3, which is 0.006. So delta L comes out to be 0.006. So when the temperature increases from 20 to 50, the length increases by 0.006. So the final length will be initial length 1.753 at 20 plus the increase in length on increasing the temperature from 20 to 50, which is 0.006. So final length comes out to be 1.753 plus 0.006, that is 1.759 meter. Okay, let's practice one more. At 25 degrees centigrade, the length is 1.68 meter. At 30 degrees centigrade, length is 1.70 meter. Then at 40 degrees centigrade, what will be the length? So at 25, it is 1.68. At 30, it is 1.70. Then at 40, what will be the length? So you will say, as the temperature increases from 25 to 30 by 5 degrees centigrade, the length increases from 1.68 to 1.70, that is increases by 0.02. So you will say, if on 5 degrees centigrade rise in temperature, the length increases by 0.02 meter. Then increasing the temperature from 25 to 40 temperature is increasing by 15 degrees centigrade. If on 5 degrees centigrade rise in temperature, the length increases by 0.02, then on 15 degrees centigrade rise in temperature, 3 times the rise in temperature, the length will also increase by 3 times. So then on 15 degrees centigrade rise in temperature, the length increases by 3 times of 0.02, that is 0.06. Now if the length increases by 0.06 and original length is 1.68, the final length will be equals to 1.68 plus 0.06, and 1.68 plus 0.06 gives you 1.74 meter. So this is how questions are easy based on linear expansion. So let's talk more on linear expansion. If we have a rod of length L at temperature T, on increasing the temperature to T plus delta T by an amount delta T, the length increases and becomes L plus delta L, where delta L is the change in length. We already know that the change in length equals to L alpha delta T, where alpha is a proportionality constant. Beta, if the length decreases, we will say that delta L is negative. Sir, what is delta L? Change in length. Length final minus length initial. If the length decreases and final length is less than initial, then the change in length will be negative. For the change in length to be negative, alpha has to be negative. Similarly, for change in length to be positive, that is the length of the rod should increase on heating, you will say that alpha has to be positive. So if the sign of alpha is positive, then the length increases on heating. And if the sign of alpha is negative, then the length decreases on heating. So we can say the final length after heating equals to original length plus the change in length. In place of change in length, you can substitute L alpha delta T. So the final length is original length plus L alpha delta T. You can take the L common and write the final length after heating equals to the length before heating into 1 plus alpha delta T. So you should remember this particular thing as well. Also better that if alpha is greater than 0, if alpha is positive, then on heating the change in length is positive. So on heating the length will increase as the change in length will positive. Similarly, if alpha is less than 0, if alpha is negative, then on heating the change in length will be negative. And if the change in length is negative, it means that the length decreases on heating. So this is the meaning of alpha being positive or negative. So if alpha is positive, on heating the length increases. If alpha is negative, then on heating the length decreases. Such a simple thing. Let's move on. There are some important points which you should know about linear expansion. What are they? The first point of how do we build the train tracks. So when rails are laid, when you are building up the train track, when the rails are laid, some gap is left between two consecutive rails. Why? Because sir, on a sunny day, when the temperature will be high, the rails will expand. As the rails will expand, there has to be space available for them to expand. Otherwise the tracks will bend. Okay, so beta remember that when rails are laid, some gap is kept so as to accommodate the temperature variation. So when the temperature increases, these two rails which are placed next to next, they should have some gap so that on heating they can move towards each other and there is an empty space. So this is how tracks are laid. So let's say each rail has a length L and the gap between two consecutive rails is D. Each rail has a length L and the gap kept between two consecutive rails is D, and you are placing multiple rails. So if the rails are to be operated at temperature delta T above the calibration temperature, if let's say you are building this track on a day when the temperature is 25 degrees centigrade, but you are an engineer who knows that sometimes in this particular region the temperature goes even up to 52 degrees centigrade. So you have to take care of the linear expansion of the rails on a hot day. So here you will say, sir, the maximum temperature rise can be 27 degrees centigrade. So I should keep this much gap empty that will be occupied on increase of temperature by 27 degrees centigrade. So if the rails are to be operated even at temperature delta T above the calibration temperature, then what has to be the relationship between D, L, delta T and alpha of the material used to make the rails? So you'll say, if you have kept gap between two consecutive rails to be D, each rail can grow on both the side up to a maximum distance D by 2. Since it can grow on both the side up to a maximum distance D by 2, the maximum possible increase in the length of one rail will be equals to D by 2 plus D by 2. And this change in length of D on a hot sunny day has to be equals to L alpha delta T. So remember that if you have laid down rails and the length of each rail is L and the gap between two consecutive rail is D, then each rail will get a distance D by 2 on both the side to expand. So the maximum length increase in each rail will be D, and D has to be equals to L alpha delta T. Now, second case, if you have got two rods placed end to end. The first rod has a length L1 and has a coefficient of linear expansion alpha 1. The second rod has a length L2 and has a coefficient of linear expansion alpha 2. What is the condition that the length of this composite rod should not change with temperature? So sir, on heating both the rod will expand now. How can the length be constant? This can only happen when one of the rod expands on heating while one of the rod shrinks on heating. Then only the length of this composite system can be constant even on increasing the temperature, right? If one of them expand and another one shrinks by the same amount, then only it is possible that the composite system of these two rods will have a temperature independent length. So you will say, if the composite rod has its length independent of temperature, then you can say the change in the length of first rod on increasing the temperature plus the change in the length of second rod on increasing the temperature should be equal to 0. If the length of first rod increases by some amount and the delta L1 is positive, then delta L2 should be negative by the same amount. or the change in the length 1 on increasing the temperature plus change in the length 2 on increasing the temperature should be equal to 0. Hence you will write beta L1 alpha 1 delta T plus L2 alpha 2 delta T should be equals to 0. Delta T cancelled, so you will get the condition that L1 alpha 1 plus L2 alpha 2 has to be equals to 0. So this is the condition given that the length of this composite rod do not depend upon the temperature. Let's move on to the next case. Third case, if you have got two rods, the left rod having a length L1 coefficient of linear expansion alpha 1, the second rod L2 having a coefficient of linear expansion alpha 2. The equivalent coefficient of linear expansion for the composite system will be how much? The equivalent coefficient of linear expansion for the composite system will be how much? So rather than thinking of two different rods made up of two different material having coefficient of linear expansion alpha 1 and alpha 2, think that you have got only one rod. This single rod has a length L1 plus L2, and let's say this single rod has a coefficient of linear expansion alpha equivalent. So you will say, think of a single rod having a length L1 plus L2 and having coefficient of linear expansion alpha equivalent. On the increase in temperature, the increase in the length of this composite system should be same as the increase in length of the single rod. Then I will say this single rod is the equivalent of this composite system. On increasing the temperature here by delta T, the increase in length will be equal to increase in the length of first rod plus the increase in the length of second rod. That will be L1 alpha 1 delta T plus L2 alpha 2 delta T. This is the increase in the length of this composite system on increasing the temperature by delta T, and this has to be equal to the increase in the length of the single rod of length L1 plus L2 having coefficient of linear expansion alpha equivalent. So this has to be equals to L1 plus L2 into alpha equivalent into delta T. Beta cancel out delta T, delta T, delta T. So you get alpha equivalent to be equals to L1 alpha 1 plus L2 alpha 2 by L1 plus L2. Okay, so alpha equivalent equals to L1 alpha 1 plus L2 alpha 2 by L1 plus L2. Next point, if you have got two rods having length L1 and L2 and having coefficient of linear expansion alpha 1 and alpha 2, and this is an important example, if the difference in the length of the two rods is temperature independent, then it means that the difference in the length, which is L1 minus L2, do not change with the temperature. How can this be possible? What is the condition such that the difference in the length of these two rods is temperature independent? So sir, this can happen when the increase in the length of first rod is same as the increase in the length of second rod. If the length of both the rods on heating increases by the same amount, if the length of both the rods on heating increases by the same amount, then the difference in the length will be constant. So you will say this is a simple question. If you want the difference in the length to be temperature independent, then the increase in the length of first rod should be equal to increase in the length of second rod such that the difference in the length will remain constant. So you can simply say beta L1 alpha 1 delta T increase in the length of first rod on heating has to be equals to L2 alpha 2 delta T. Cancel out delta T, you simply get L1 alpha 1 equals to L2 alpha 2. Whenever I say something is important, it doesn't mean that it's tough. It's just that it's important. So this is a simple important case. Keep this case especially in mind. Moving on. If you have a simple pendulum, on heating the whole system, the length of the string increases. We know that the time period of simple pendulum is 2 pi under root L by G. So if the length of the string increases, its time period will increase. So we say time period of simple pendulum is 2 pi under root L by G. For small change in length, you can write delta T by T equals to half delta L by L. Now you can write the change in length as L alpha delta theta. Sir, why are you not using delta T? Because I am using delta T for change in time period. So for change in temperature, I am using another symbol which is delta theta. So I can say the change in time period upon time period equals to half into L alpha delta theta by L, and bring this T on the right hand side. Now beta, you can cancel out L and L. So you will say the change in time period equals to half times alpha times the coefficient of linear expansion of this wire material into the change in temperature times the original time period. So this is the change in time period of a simple pendulum. Now let's do a question based on this. A simple pendulum is made up of wire of coefficient of linear expansion 2 into 10 raised to the power of minus 5 per degree centigrade. So this is the value of alpha. It is used in a clock calibrated to be operated at 25 degrees centigrade. This clock is meant to be used at 25 degrees centigrade. If the clock is operated at 30 degrees centigrade at a higher temperature, how much time it will lose every day? So first thing that you should keep in mind, how do you know, sir, it will lose time? See beta. How does a grandfather clock work? In a grandfather clock, there is a pendulum. The pendulum swings, and as the pendulum swings, the second hand on the face of the clock ticks. Okay. Now, when you increase the temperature from 25 to 30, the length of the wire increases. When the length of the wire increases, the time period increases. As the time period increases, the gap between two successive ticks increases. As the gap between two successive ticks increases, we know that the grandfather's clock is slowing down. So if a grandfather's clock is operated at a temperature higher than its calibration temperature, then the length of the string increases. So the time period of oscillation increases. So it takes more times between two successive ticks. As it takes more time between two successive ticks, the clock slows down. Okay. So first of all, it will lose time. How much? Sir, I know the formula. The change in time equals to half into alpha into change in temperature into the time. Original time is given to you as 24 hours. You can write 24 hours as 24 into 3600 seconds. Delta theta is given as increase from 25 to 35. Alpha is given in question as 2 into 10 raised to the power of minus 5. Just plug in all the data and solve. So this is not a tough question. You will say time period equals to 2 pi under root L by G. So delta T by T equals to half delta L by L. In place of delta L, you can write L alpha delta theta. So you get delta T equals to half L alpha delta theta into T by L. The length get cancelled. So you get delta T equals to half alpha delta theta into T. Now beta, you know all the data here. Just plug in the data. So you will get how much time is lost in a day. So you'll get half into alpha, which is 2 into 10 raised to the power of minus 5, into the change in temperature, which is 5 into 24 hour. One day has got 24 hour. Rather than writing 24 hour, you can write in second as 24 into 3600. So you get here 2 to get cancelled beta. 5 into 10 raised to the power of minus 5 into 24 into 3600, which on solving you will get equal to 4.32 seconds. So if this grandfather's clock is used at 30 degrees centigrade, it will lose 4.32 seconds every day. In one day, it won't be a big matter, but after 100 days, 200 days, this clock will show a greater variation in its reading. So let's move on to the next simple tough question. The question is very easy. You do not have to raise pen, but it will eat up your brain a little. A metal scale calibrated at 25 degrees centigrade measures the length to be 20 centimeter at 30 degrees centigrade. So there is a metal scale which is calibrated at 25 degrees centigrade. Okay, this scale measures a length to be 20 centimeter at 30 degrees centigrade. So at a temperature higher than the calibration temperature. What is the question? Question is the actual length of the object whose length is measured to be 20 centimeter is more or less than 20 centimeter. Okay, so a scale is calibrated at 25 degrees centigrade. This scale measures the length of an object to be 20 centimeter on a day when the temperature is 30 degrees centigrade. Okay, the actual length of that object is more than 20 centimeter or less than 20 centimeter. The actual length of that object is more than 20 or less than 20. So beta, here we are not changing the temperature of object. Object has a particular temperature. We are increasing the temperature of the scale. So if you have this scale at 25 degrees centigrade, on increasing the temperature of scale, what will happen? Sir, the scale will expand because they have given it's a metal scale. So the distance between the gaps will increase. Here there will be a mark which will be now away from the zero mark. It will still read 20 centimeter, but it will be more than 20 centimeter. So on heating, the gap between the marks increases, and once the gap between the marks increases, the scale looks still the same. There are same number of marks, but this 20 centimeter mark will now be away from the zero. Now you have placed an object next to it, and you are using the scale at temperature of 30, and you say that okay, this object length reads to be 20, but is it actually 20? No. Since on heating the scale the marks have moved away, the gap has increased. It reads 20, but it is actually more than 20. So it reads 20 centimeter, but it is actually more than 20 centimeter. So if you are measuring something using a metal scale at temperature above its calibration temperature, the reading you are getting is less than actual. The actual length is more, the reading you are getting is less. Let's move on. There is something called thermal stress and thermal strain. Now let's talk about them one by one. If I ask students what is a strain, this is the longitudinal strain. The longitudinal strain is given by change in length upon length. Now here is a word of caution. Everybody say strain is change in length upon length, but there is a rider that this change in length should be produced by the application of force. If this change in length is produced without the application of force, then you do not consider it as a part of strain. So what is a strain? Change in length upon length, but that change in length should be produced by an application of force. So strain equals to delta L by L. Here delta L is the change in length due to application of force. Now you will be able to appreciate better what I am trying to explain here. Let's say you have a table, and on the table you have a rod of length L at temperature T. The rod is free to expand. The ends are not at all fixed. The rod is free to expand. If I increase the temperature of rod from T and increase it to T plus delta T, the length will increase. If I ask you what is the strain developed in this rod, student in unison say that sir, the strain has to be change in length upon length. That has to be delta L by L. But better do understand here the change in length is not being produced by the application of force. You are not pulling it, not compressing it. Here the change in length is produced because of the change in temperature. So remember that the delta L should be because of the force acting. So here, since there is no change in length produced due to the application of force, you will say that in this case no thermal strain is developed, because delta L, which is the change in length due to application of force, is zero. You have applied no force. So no thermal strain is developed as no force is being applied. Now we know that Young's modulus equals to stress upon strain. Since the strain developed in this rod is zero, the stress also have to be zero. So no thermal stress is developed. Also beta, stress equals to force upon area. If you are not applying any force, stress has to be zero, right? So that's what I am trying to reiterate here again and again. But sir, we have learned a topic of thermal stress that is for a special case. The special case goes like, if the rod is fixed between two walls. Now if you increase the temperature of the rod will try to expand, but it won't be able to expand because of the force due to the fixed supports. So the rod is clamped between two rigid walls. Now if you increase the temperature of this metal rod, it tries to expand, but because of the force from the wall, it can't expand. So on increasing the temperature by delta T for this rod, it will try to increase its length from L, and it would have a length L plus delta L, where delta L equals to L alpha delta T if the wall would not have been there. So if this rod would have undergone a free expansion, the length of this rod would have been L plus delta L. Now if I ask you, what is the strain produced in this rod due to the force by the walls, what will be your answer? So you will say, sir, the length of this rod would have been L plus delta L if no force would have acted. And the length of this rod due to the force on the wall is L. So the force applied by the wall is the reason why the length changes from L plus delta L to L. So the change in length is delta L due to the application of force, and the length that would have been if no force would have acted is L plus delta L. That's why we won't say the strain is delta L by L. We will say that the length would have been L plus delta L, but because of the force due to wall, the length is still L. So due to the force by the wall, a change in length of delta L is produced. So the strain should be written as the change in length due to the force upon the length that would have been if no force would have acted. So delta L upon L plus delta L. So you will write the strain to be equals to L alpha delta T upon L plus L alpha delta T. From the denominator, take L common and cancel it with numerator. So you get strain has to be equals to alpha delta T upon 1 plus alpha delta T. At the very beginning of linear expansion, I said that here we are talking about small change in temperature. So if the temperature change is small, and but if alpha delta T is less than 1, then you can neglect alpha delta T in front of 1, and you can write strain to be equal to, for alpha delta T less than 1, you can write strain to be equal to alpha delta T by 1, which is alpha delta T. So the thermal strain produced due to the forces by the wall equals to alpha delta T upon 1 plus alpha delta T. But since in real world alpha delta T is less than 1, we can neglect this part of alpha delta T in addition with 1 in the denominator, and you get strain to be equals to alpha delta T. Now again we know that Young's modulus equals to stress upon strain. So substituting the value of strain as alpha delta T, we can say the stress developed in this rod, which is also called thermal stress, is equals to Y alpha delta T. Substitute strain as alpha delta T and multiply. So you get the thermal stress developed in this particular rod is Y alpha delta T. So in the free rod, which was free to expand, the thermal stress developed was 0. For the rod clamped between two fixed walls, the thermal stress developed is Y alpha delta T. Okay, remember this thing. Moving on. There is something called superficial expansion. Till the time we have talked about linear expansion. Now we will talk about superficial expansion, which I also call aerial expansion. So let's say there is a randomly shaped object at temperature T having an area A. If I increase the temperature from T plus delta T, so the area will increase and the area will become, let's say, A plus delta A when the temperature is increased from T and it becomes T plus delta T. Notice that the geometry does not change. The shape remains the same. It's just that the size increases. Again, we say the same thing, all the things which we have said for linear expansion. We say that the change in area is directly proportional to original area. The change in area is directly proportional to change in temperature. And then we add up a proportionality constant. And we say the change in area equals to original area into a proportionality constant beta into delta T. But this proportionality constant beta is called coefficient of superficial expansion, or sometimes people call it coefficient of aerial expansion. So once you have got this, you can even say the final area after heating is original area plus change in area. Now you can write change in area as original area into beta into delta T, and then you can take A common. So the final area after heating equals to final area after heating equals to original area into 1 plus beta delta T. Simple thing. What we are going to do now is super duper important. So have your 100% attention. What we are going to do is now we are going to understand expansion. Let's say we have a disk. I could have taken here any random shape, but for the sake of understanding, I am talking about a disk. And let's say the diameter of this disk is R, and this disk is made up of numerous atoms. Okay, these are the shown atoms. Let's say the separation between two consecutive atoms is T. On heating, what happens? So the disk expands. So the separation between two consecutive atoms will increase. If on heating, the diameter of this disk changes from R and become 1.1 R. If the diameter becomes 1.1 time, it means that the separation between any two atoms on this disk becomes 1.1 time and changes from D and become 1.1 D. So if on this object, I would have marked 2 points A and B. Then the separation between A and B, if before the expansion is L, then after the expansion, even the separation between these 2 points on the disk will become 1.1 times and it will be 1.1 L. So the separation between any 2 points on the body becomes 1.1 times. Think of linear expansion as a photographic zoom in. You look at a photograph in your mobile, you zoom it in, you pinch it with your fingers and you zoom it in. What happens? The distance between any 2 points on the picture increases. If you visualize the face of a person on your mobile and you zoom it in, then the size of the ear increases, the size of the nose increases, the size of the mouth increases, the size of everything on zooming increases by the same amount. It does not alter the geometry. The geometry remains the same, just the size increases. So let's see with some example what happens. So first case, there is a metal plate with two holes punched into it. A hole of radius R1, a hole of radius R2. And the separation between the centers of these two holes is D. Question is, on heating the metal plate, what happens to the two radius? The R1 increases, R1 decreases, R2 increases or R2 decreases, and the separation between the centers. The separation between their center will increase or decrease. So for an object made up of homogeneous material, even with some blank space, think of heating as zooming in. So just visualize the picture of this thing on your mobile phone, and if you zoom it in, what will happen to R1? So if I zoom in this picture, the R1 will increase. What will happen to R2? If I zoom it in, R2 will increase. And if I zoom it in, if I take this picture on camera and zoom it in, the separation between these two centers will increase. That's why on heating, R1, R2 and D, everything will increase. So on heating, the separation between the 2 points increases. So beta, R1 increases, R2 increases, as well as D will increase. Now, if they tell me that the coefficient of linear expansion of this plate material is alpha and the temperature is increased by delta T, tell me what will be the final radius of the first circle. I will simply say R1 into 1 plus alpha delta T. What will be the final radius of this second hole? R2 into 1 plus alpha delta T. What will be the final distance between these two centers? Initial distance D into 1 plus alpha delta T. So each distance between any 2 points on this object becomes 1 plus alpha delta T times. So that factor of 1.1 which I took now, that is nothing but 1 plus alpha delta T. Okay. Moving on. The question is, you have a ring with a cut. So you took a complete ring and some part of that ring has been broken. So now here you can see a point A, a point B and the rest of the ring. The gap between point A and B has a length x. The radius of this ring is r, and this arc AB subtend an angle theta at the center. A simple question. The figure shows a ring with a cut. If the coefficient of linear expansion of ring is alpha, find radius. What will be the radius on increasing the temperature by delta T? The cut length. What will be the length of this small cut when the temperature is increased by delta T? And what will be the angle subtended at center theta when the temperature is increased by delta T? So what will be the radius on increasing the temperature by delta T? What will be the value of x and what will be the value of theta? So we will again visualize it as zooming in a picture. If you have this picture on your mobile phone and you zoom it in, then what will happen? So this whole thing will become bigger without changing the geometry. Now x will increase, yes. Radius will increase, yes. What will happen to theta? So theta will remain the same because the geometry doesn't change, the angles doesn't change. So theta will remain the same while both radius as well as x will increase. So you will say the final radius will be equals to initial radius r into 1 plus alpha delta T. The final distance between A and B, the length of this gap will be equal to initial length of the gap x into 1 plus alpha delta T, but the theta remains the same. So theta will be same as the geometry does not change. So now it's time to talk about volume expansion. Think of a three-dimensional object, and let's say this object has density rho and volume V, and this is the thing at temperature T. When you heat up the object expands. As the object expands, its volume increases and hence the density will decrease. Let's say after heating, the density is rho dash and the volume has increased by an amount delta V. So the final volume comes out to be V plus delta V at a temperature T plus delta T. The same old. The change in volume has to be directly proportional to original volume. The change in volume has to be directly proportional to change in temperature. And every time physicists get these things, they add up a proportionality constant. And they say the change in volume has to be equal to original volume into gamma into delta T. Now here gamma is called coefficient of volume expansion. Okay. Now we can say that the final volume after heating has to be equal to original volume plus the change in volume. In the place of change in volume, you can write V gamma delta T and then you can take V common. So the final volume comes out to be V times 1 plus gamma delta T. Beta, if gamma is positive, then the volume increases on heating. If gamma is negative, then the volume decreases on heating. Okay, remember this thing. Now, we can even talk about density. We know that as you heat up the object, its mass remains constant. What happens is that the volume increases. Since the volume increases, the density will decrease. So, on heating, the mass does not change. On heating, the mass does not change. So, we can say that original density is mass by original volume V. And the new density, rho dash, equals to mass by the new volume, which has been written as Vf. Now, dividing both the sides, you will get rho by rho dash equals to mv by m by vf. So m by v upon m by vf. So cancelling out m, what you get on the right hand side is final volume by initial volume. Our mission is to find the final density after heating in terms of the original density. Our mission is to find rho dash in terms of rho. So since you know that rho by rho dash equals to vf by v, bring the rho dash up here and this v up here and this vf down here. So you get rho dash equals to rho into V by the final volume. Now we know that the final volume equals to initial volume into 1 plus gamma delta T. Substitute it here and then cancel out V and V. So you can say that the final density after heating equals to initial density upon 1 plus gamma delta T. And isn't it obvious? But a mass is constant, yes. So sir, the density and volume has to be inversely proportional. If the volume becomes 1 plus gamma delta T times, then the density will become 1 upon 1 plus gamma delta T times, right? They are inversely proportional. Now there is another way to write the final density using the initial density gamma and the change in temperature. You can say the final density is equals to original density upon 1 plus gamma delta T. This can also be written as rho times 1 plus gamma delta T raised to the power of minus 1. If gamma delta T is less than 1, because I said at the very beginning we are talking about small temperature changes. If gamma delta T is less than 1, you can apply binomial approximation and bring this minus 1 in front. So that can be written as rho times 1 plus minus 1 into gamma delta T, or the final density rho dash equals to initial density rho into 1 minus gamma delta T. So we can even write the final density rho dash to be equals to original density rho into 1 minus gamma delta T. That's all, simple thing, right? Moving on. What is the relationship between alpha, beta and gamma? So first we will talk about relationship between alpha and beta, then we will find relationship between alpha and gamma, and once we know relationship between alpha, beta and alpha, gamma, we know what is the relationship between alpha, beta and gamma. So let's say we have a rectangular plate of length L, width B and having an area A. We can say that the area has to be length into width, L into B. After heating, let's say the final length is LF, the final width is BF and the final area is AF. So you can even say that the final area will be equals to final length into final breadth. So let's say this is the system at temperature T and this is the system at temperature T plus delta T after heating. So we know that the final area equals to original area into 1 plus beta delta T. Sir, how do you know? From the coefficient of superficial expansion, final area has to be original area into 1 plus beta delta T. And we can even say the length final will be equals to original length into 1 plus alpha delta T. The width final equals to original width into 1 plus alpha delta T. And the area final can also be written as the final length into final width. So when you substitute the value of final length into final width, what you get is The final area equals to 1 times 1 plus alpha delta t times b times 1 plus alpha delta t. So that gives you L into b times 1 plus alpha delta t whole square. Now, if alpha delta t is less than 1, you can do binomial approximation. You can bring this 2 in front and you can replace this quantity LB, the length into width, with the original area. So you get the final area equals to original area into 1 plus alpha delta t whole square. For alpha delta t less than 1, if you are doing small temperature changes, you can write the final area equals to original area into 1 plus 2 alpha delta t, bringing this 2 in front using binomial approximation. Now comparing this equation with this equation, you can see that the final area equals to original area into 1 plus beta delta t. The final area equals to original area into 1 plus 2 alpha delta t. On comparing these two, you will say that beta has to be equals to 2 alpha. So beta is double of that of alpha. The coefficient of superficial expansion is double of that of alpha. Now let's think of next case. How to determine relationship between alpha and gamma. So now think of a 3D object having a volume V, length L, width B, height H. And on heating, let's say the volume become V final, the length final, width B final, height H final. So you can say original volume has to be equals to LBH and the final volume has to be final length into final width into final height. Now one can even write the final volume as 1 plus gamma delta T. If the original volume is V, then after heating the final volume has to be 1 plus gamma delta T. The final volume can be written as the final length, which is L times 1 plus alpha delta T, into final width, which is B times 1 plus alpha delta T, into final height, which is H times 1 plus alpha delta T. So you can bring this LBH together and write the final volume as LBH into 1 plus alpha delta t whole cube. 1 plus alpha delta t, 1 plus alpha delta t, 1 plus alpha delta t get multiplied, you get 1 plus alpha delta t whole cube. Now beta, in place of LBH, you can write the original volume and then you can do binomial approximation. For alpha delta t less than 1, you can bring 3 in front. So you can even write V final equals to original volume into 1 plus alpha delta t whole cube. For alpha delta t less than 1, you can do the binomial approximation, bring the 3 in front. So you get the final volume equals to original volume into 1 plus 3 alpha delta t. Now comparing this equation of volume expansion with what we have just got, we can see there is only one thing different. In place of gamma, you have got 3 alpha. So on comparing, we can say that gamma equals to 3 alpha. Now we know that beta equals to 2 alpha, gamma equals to 3 alpha, and alpha is alpha. So beta is double of alpha, gamma is triple of alpha. So beta, we can say alpha is to beta is to gamma has to be equals to 1 is to 2 is to 3. So alpha, beta, gamma are in the ratio 1 is to 2 is to 3. We have said this for material which in all 3 dimensions have the same coefficient of linear expansion. Such substances which have same property in all directions are called isotropic substances. Now let's talk about substances which do not have the same property in all 3 directions. So let's talk about anisotropic substances. Think that you have a metal plate which is anisotropic in nature. So along 2 perpendicular directions, the coefficient of linear expansion is alpha 1 and alpha 2. Now how will you write correlation between beta and alpha? So for such a case, you say beta equals to alpha 1 plus alpha 2. And if you are talking about 3D, so you have got 3 perpendicular axes about which the coefficient of linear expansion is alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3. Then you can write gamma, the coefficient of volume expansion will be equals to alpha 1 plus alpha 2 plus alpha 3. A simple thing to remember. Moving on to a question. There is a container. The container is made up of material having coefficient of linear expansion alpha c, and there is a fluid filled in the container having coefficient of volume expansion gamma f. Question is, if the volume of container and fluid is Vc, so the volume of container is Vc, and Vf, the volume of fluid inside is Vf. Determine the relationship for which the empty volume is independent of temperature. So whatever empty volume you have here should be independent of temperature. In this hour only, we have learned the solution to this particular case. What do you want? Sir, the empty volume in the container to be constant. What is empty volume? Sir, empty volume is nothing but volume of container minus volume of fluid. So you want the difference in the volume of container and fluid to be constant, na? Huh. For the difference in the volume of container and fluid to be constant and independent of temperature, what has to be the condition? Sir, the increase in the volume of container on heating should be equal to increase in the volume of fluid on heating. Just like the case we learned for two rods, if you have got two rods of length L1, alpha 1, L2, alpha 2, if you want the difference in the length to be constant, then length of both of them should increase by the same amount on heating. Here I am saying volume of both of them should increase by the same amount on heating. So we say for empty volume to be constant, both the volume should change by the same amount on heating. So we say that volume of container into gamma of container into delta T should be equal to volume of fluid into gamma of fluid into delta T. Cancelling of delta T from both the sides, you simply get volume of container. In place of gamma of container, we are writing 3 alpha C has to be equals to volume of fluid into gamma of fluid. Such a simple thing. Okay. So the next thing, gamma effective. If you have a container filled with a fluid, on heating, both the container as well as the fluid expands. When both the container as well as the fluid expands, the apparent increase in the volume of fluid appear to be less. What's up? Think that you have a beaker filled with the fluid. On heating, both the container as well as fluid will expand. So as both of them expand, the apparent increase in the volume of fluid appears to be less than the original. Think of one extreme case. Let's say the fluid is not at all expanding, but the container expands a lot. If on heating the container expands a lot, then the level of fluid will appear to decrease. It will appear as if the fluid is shrinking, right? Think of another extreme case. Let's say when the volume of container is constant, the volume of container is not at all changing on heating, on cooling, but the volume of fluid increases and decreases on heating and cooling. Then in such a container, when you heat it, the fluid will expand and it might come out of the container. Now think of the next case when there is a container and it contains some fluid. The fluid expands but by little bit. So fluid expands little bit on heating, but the container expands a lot. Then since the fluid will expand but the container will expand more, it will appear as if the fluid is not at all expanding. It is shrinking, right? So what I'm saying is there is something called gamma effective, the effective coefficient of volume expansion. We say that the effective or apparent the change in volume equals to change in volume of fluid minus change in volume of container. So we can write original volume into gamma apparent into delta T equals to change in volume of fluid, which is V times gamma fluid into delta T minus change in volume of container, which is again V times gamma container into delta T. So beta cancel out V delta T, V delta T, V delta T. So you say gamma apparent or gamma effective is nothing but gamma of fluid minus gamma of container. So on heating, both the container and fluid will expand. We say that the effective value of gamma or the gamma apparent is equals to gamma of fluid minus gamma of container. Keep this simple thing in mind. Now in many of the question, rather than writing gamma container, they will write 3 alpha container, which is one and the same thing, right? Because gamma is 3 times of alpha. Now let's say you have a container filled up to the brim. What is the condition of fluid to flow out on heating? And what is the condition for fluid not to flow out, fluid not to spill on heating? So, sir, on heating, the fluid will spill. On heating, the fluid will spill when? Sir, when the fluid expands more than the container. So, if the change in volume of fluid is more than the change in volume of container, then the fluid will spill. So you can write V into gamma fluid into delta T has to be greater than V into gamma container into delta T. Cancel out delta T, V. So if the coefficient of volume expansion of fluid is greater than the coefficient of volume expansion of container, then the fluid spills on heating. Now, what is the condition of fluid getting spilled from this container on heating, that gamma fluid has to be greater than gamma container. And the fluid does not spill on heating if the coefficient of volume expansion of container is greater than the coefficient of volume expansion of fluid. Simple thing. Let's move on to the last question for this hour. So question is, there is a container. The container has a base area A. The coefficient of linear expansion of the container material is alpha C. There is a fluid filled in this container up to a height h, and the coefficient of volume expansion of this fluid is gamma f. Question is, find the height of the fluid after increasing the temperature by delta T. Once you increase the temperature by delta T, what will be the final height of this fluid in the container? So you will say, after heating, the base area will increase. The container's base area will increase because the container will expand. If the original base area of this container is A, then after heating, the base area will be original base area into 1 plus 2 alpha C delta T, because we are talking about superficial expansion and beta is 2 alpha. So 1 plus 2 alpha C delta T. Let's say after heating, the final height of the fluid is H dash. So we can write here two equations to correlate with the final volume of fluid. So on heating, the fluid expand, that tries to increase the height, yes, but due to increase in the base area of the container, the base area increases, the height tries to decrease. So due to expansion of fluid, the height is trying to increase, but due to increase in the base area of container, the height will try to decrease. We can write the final volume as original volume into 1 plus gamma fluid into delta T. Original volume of the fluid in this container can be written as original base area into original height, because it's a cylindrical container. So the original volume of fluid can be written as the area of cross section of container times the height of fluid. So you can write AH into 1 plus gamma F delta T. This will be the final volume of fluid in the container, original volume into 1 plus gamma F delta T. You can even say the final volume of fluid in the same container has to be equals to the base area, final base area after heating multiplied by the final height. So which is H dash, the final height, times the final base area, which is original area into 1 plus 2 alpha delta T. Now beta, all you have to do is equate these two quantities, because both of them represent the final volume of the fluid. So you will get, equating these two, you will get A into H into 1 plus gamma F delta T is same as H dash into A into 1 plus 2 alpha C delta T. So let us cancel out A and A. Our mission is to find the final height H dash. So you will say the final height H dash equals to H into 1 plus gamma fluid into delta T upon 1 plus 2 times alpha container into delta T. So the final height H dash equals to H into 1 plus gamma F delta T upon 1 plus 2 alpha C delta T. So that's all in this hour. In the next hour, we will talk about heat transfer, the conduction mode. See you guys in next hour. Bye bye.